Hey everyone, welcome to our weekly AMA with Hemi co-founder Max Sanchez. I don't really have a spiel, so I'm just going to turn the floor directly over to Max, and then we'll get your questions answered and take it from there.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, so a quick update on what's been going on over behind the scenes at Hemi. Last 2 weeks, we've been working on some infrastructure improvements, and so we migrated. We were previously using Electromex in our backend. We migrated that fully to Electors, which is a lot more high performance and reliable. And so pot mining is not working wonderfully 100% of the time for everyone, but it should definitely be a market improvement from where we were 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we got that. We've been working on a lot of HVM testing in preparation for Mainnet. We've also been working on some stuff with the Bitcoin tunnel smart contracts that we're going to be initially deploying on Mainnet, and we'll be putting those on Testnet for people to start playing around with in the relatively near future. Not going to give a exact date yet until we actually nail down the testnet upgrade schedule, but that is coming up imminently, and that'll be part of the points program as well. So that'll be another thing for people to do on incentivized testnet is try tunneling testnet Bitcoin over to the Hemi network. And just as a for anyone here who's looking at Hemi from the builder perspective, the way that tunneled Bitcoin on the Hemi network is going to work is basically the tunneled Bitcoin is going to be represented as an ERC20, and then that ERC20 is backed by Bitcoin in a flexible custodianship system. So basically, that means that over time, as we move from using over-collateralized custodianship mechanisms to eventually BitVM-based ones, and also there could be upgrade steps along the way to add support for borrowing economic security from other platforms like we're initially planning on using Symbiotic and Swell, but that could evolve over time. We could add in more economic security mechanisms and stuff like that. So over time, as the custodianship system evolves, it'll be the same testnet Bitcoin asset itself, and just the Bitcoin that's actually backing that in the custodianship system will be rotated out through different custodianship mechanisms, which means that if you, for example, were to tunnel over Bitcoin on day one when it's an over-collateralized custodianship system, and then in 6 months from now we fully migrated to BitVM, your TBTC or your HBTC asset on Hemi doesn't change. It's just behind the scenes, the protocol is able to facilitate that migration of custodianship mechanisms. So we think that'll give us the flexibility to do upgrades in mainnet to improve the custodianship mechanism while not creating any sort of like liquidity fragmentation or any of those issues. So we're going to be again testing that on testnet in the relatively near future. And what else? The BD team's also been super active. I won't give too detailed of an update there, but stay tuned on Twitter over the next week or two. There's some exciting announcements coming out for additional partnerships. And yeah, I think those are the main things. So let's get into the AMA.
All right, we have 3 hands raised. Josh, you want to pull folks in order? Looks like we got Abe. All right, Abe, the floor is yours. You're currently muted. If you wouldn't mind unmuting, and then the stage is yours, sir. If you want to type your question, we can address it that way, if that's better.
Yes, only one question. TBTC faucet, how much daily I claim?
Are you asking about the claim delay for the TBTC faucet?
G, yes.
I believe it's currently set to 12 hours, but I know we've been making some changes there, so Joshua and Rick are probably better equipped to answer that.
Yeah, you can currently claim 0.1 TBC every 12 hours. If the bot fails, you'll have to wait an additional 12 hours to help prevent spam, but we're trying to improve that so that you'll be able to claim TBTC more reliably in the future.
Okay, sir.
All right. Well, we hope that answers your question. Thank you so much. Next, I believe we have one more hand up. Yes, we have Nikki on deck. Nikki Love.
Yeah, I want to first of all thank the Hemi community. What you guys are building is so awesome. I really liked it. Well, I have a few questions. Starting from the TBTC preset. I realized that it's hard to get research these days, starting from yesterday. Maybe can you guys help to make it easier for us? Because sometimes when you try to get reset, you get an error message for over an hour, 2 hours, more than hours, so many hours, and that's one. Okay, we community are so curious when you guys will be releasing the early adopters NFT as well. So I want to know if you guys have any plans for that. And the last one is about the swapping features right now. I noticed that sometimes after swapping each day, I don't get the 200 points per swap because we have a maximum of 2 swap per day, right? So I noticed that sometimes after swapping, after some hours, like up to 8 hours, I don't get to see the point. So these are my questions.
So for TBTC Faucet, we're working on improving it. The problem is it's getting spammed by a lot of, well, it was getting spammed by a lot of bots, so we had to make some changes to how it functions to try to prevent that. And so there may be some people caught in the crossfire with being able to claim TBTC because of the way that we implemented the back off. So we are working on improving that. But yeah, if you have an issue with it, you'll have to wait 12 hours and then retry the claim for now. But we do want to improve that in the future. The primary reason the TBTC faucet stops working, well, there's a couple. Obviously, when it runs out of funds, if it gets attacked by a bunch of bots, but also the API that we're using on the backend sometimes returns bad UTXO data, and so that ends up making the faucet create invalid transactions. So it's the engineering team's focused primarily on stuff in preparation for mainnet, and so going and putting a bunch of engineering time into the faucets, pretty low priority, unfortunately, but it is something we are looking to continue to improve. For the early adopter NFT, we haven't announced any concrete plans. Those NFTs will be transferred over to Hemi mainnet, but as to, and as just as an ERC 721, they'll be tradable in whatever ways NFTs normally are, but there's no concrete plans for any sort of marketplace per se, but they will be tradable NFTs that people can choose to trade if they want to. So more info will come out on that eventually, but that is not really something on the engineering side. That's more of marketing biz dev. For the what was the third question?
No, I think that's all. Thank you so much.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your questions, Nikki. Gonna put you back in the audience. All right, Josh, we got a couple more hands up.
I've invited Florence on stage.
GM, everyone. Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. So I have a few questions that concerns the capsule. Okay, so for some time, whenever I want to create a capsule, it normally takes me to the Ethereum mainnet instead of the Hemi network. So I've been trying to change that. I've done swaps. I've even used the tunnel and everything. Sometimes it works. It comes to Hemi, but sometimes it does not work. Like this week now, I've been trying to do it for a while now, but it's kept it has kept me on the mainnet, and everything I can see there are mainnet tokens. So I'm trying my best to change it back to Hemi or get it to reflect Hemi network, and I don't know, it's not working. So I don't know what to do. That for the longest, it has always stopped me from doing my tags on Capsule. I think I've only done it successfully like once in a week. So in a particular week all this while. So I don't know, is there a way we can sort that out without having to, encounter such issues anymore, because it's getting old. I don't know, that's just what I want to say. One of the things anyways.
Yeah, so Capsule, the protocol itself does work on Ethereum mainnet, and there's some people who have used it on Ethereum mainnet for stuff other than Hemi, and so we do need to keep that compatibility, but it sounds like there's some users who are getting pushed into using it on mainnet, or at least the configuration isn't clear, so we've gotten a couple other reports of people with similar things, so we'll look into it. You should be able to, on the Capsule interface, change the connected network. I forget whether it's in the web UI or whether it's based purely on what you're connected to in MetaMask, but we did have a couple team members test that internally late last week because there were a few people having a similar issue to you, and we couldn't reproduce it internally, but we will look into it.
Okay, so I tried to change the network, but it is not clickable. It's not responsive. So when I click on the network symbol there, it does not respond. So I can change it. And the funny thing is, I'm always on Hemi network whenever I want to do the capsule, but for some reason it switches it to the mainnet. So there is no way for me to change it on the site. So that's the problem that has been reoccurring weekly. That
Okay,
was also
so you see the network selection, but when you click on it, it doesn't actually change the network is the issue?
Yeah, it doesn't respond at all. Like it has no, it's not responsive from my end. I've tried it on PC, I've tried it on phone, you understand, it doesn't work. And a few other people under me has also tried it, and it also doesn't work for them. Sometimes it works, like last week it worked, but this week it has gone back to the status quo, everything.
Got it. Okay, appreciate the report. We'll look into it.
All right, thank you. Okay, yeah, sorry. Before I go, the swap has been really bad. So yesterday, and the day before yesterday, I couldn't do any, like I couldn't do swaps and everything. But today I had to increase the spillage up to 10%, and then I had to increase the amount I was swapping before it was able to go. But funny enough, I did something yesterday. We didn't go, but today it went. So I don't know if there's a way to like try to stabilize that already, because that's the whole essence of the testnet. The issue has been lingering for a while now, and we need to sort it out. So I don't know.
Yeah, good question. So the issue with the swaps is it usually comes down to liquidity, and that manifests in two ways. Either A, the people have been trading one asset for the other in a particular pool, and so the imbalance of assets is really high, which causes high slippage even with small trades. The other issue can be, even if the pool is relatively balanced, a lot of people are trying to do swap transactions, and so what happens is when you submit a swap transaction, you set slippage tolerances in your transaction as basically normally in a Uniswap or a Sushi swap in mainnet. That setting is to to prevent people from front running your transaction and like manipulating the DEX price and getting you to trade at a higher price in a way that favors them. The problem is on Testnet, there's tons of people doing swaps that affect the underlying price of the pool, and you don't know what order those transactions are going to get into the L2. So we do need to deploy some more liquidity into the pools, so we'll look at that. But also, if you're running into that issue, sometimes it's just unavoidable, because if you set a swap transaction and then 20 swap transactions get confirmed ahead of you and move the pool price quite a bit, it will cause your transaction to fail. But you can try to address it by, again, changing the slippage. It sounds like you've already been changing that to 10%. You can try setting that even higher. Or try swapping on a pool that's less likely to be abused. So some of the pools, because there is some real market value for Sepulveda ETH, some people are going and farming stable coins and then using that in our pools to get ETH out, basically. And so you may have better luck with a USDT to USDC, or USDC to DAI, or one of those pools, rather than one of the ones that's against wrapped Ethereum. But we do have to deploy some more liquidity in the pools as well.
All right, thank you very much. So what was with the pipe POP miner though? I tried to I created a wallet there. I got my path, everything saved. So when I went to the faucet bot to go get the faucet, it said invalid or error. And then I went to other BTC faucet apps to try to get the also said invalid address. So is it that, I don't know, was it that the address I got that was generated wasn't valid, or there was an error with it? I don't know.
How are you generating the address? Were you using the CLI pop miner or trying to use the web pop miner?
Okay, yeah, I think it was I'm not sure which one. I think it was the first one. I don't know. I think I just switched my system up. I think it was the first one. I just chose the first one and I created there, and then I saved the whole everything. Then I did get one faucet from one faucet platform. I think I got like 0.0001 BTC or something. It was too small to initiate to do something, and they said I needed, I think, 0.1 or 0.01. So I had to go back to go different places to try to get faucet. I went to the also on Discord, and that one failed. I tried like 2 times, it didn't work. And then I tried so many places, it was just saying invalid and all those things. Only one place validated it. I don't know.
Got it. So the Discord faucet, we are working on improving it, but sometimes it does return an error through no fault of your own. If you were trying to use other faucets, and like you identified, all the other faucets, at least that I've seen, don't give enough TBTC to do any pop mining, so it's not really worth it. The fees on Testnet Bitcoin right now are just too high for Coin Faucet or any of the other ones to give you an amount you could pop mine with. Do you know if your address started with either an M as in Mary or an N as in Nancy? Because that's the format of address that the pop miner should be generating. And it is possible you generated maybe a mainnet address or something else that was invalid.
I'm not certain exactly, because I did generate it from the site. So right there in the pop miner. So I just created from there, generated everything from there. So but there were two options. I think I chose the first one.
Okay, so you were using the web pop miner in your browser, right?
Yes, my PC browser.
Got it. Okay, yeah, the address that generates should be valid, and there shouldn't be a way to accidentally configure it wrong. So the faucet error was probably just an issue with our faucet. So I would try that again. But also, if you want to post your Bitcoin address in the chat here, I can take a look and make sure it is correctly formatted. Excuse me.
Okay. Let me just on my system and I paste it back. I'll just send it to the chat section right now. Let me just power my system right now.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'll double check it.
Irana, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Is it possible to bring liquidity on testnet DEX? That's from Alex, and it's regarding Uniswap.
It is possible, so we don't advertise a way for people to do it because it's not something we're incentivizing. But if you go to, let me make sure I have the URL right. Let's see. And again, this isn't something we encourage people to do, but if it's something that you did want to play around with, you can do it at this URL here that I'm posting in chat. So not incentivized, but if you want to play around with it, you're more than welcome to go there and create. I think you can create either V2 or V3 positions. All the ones that we've been doing are V3 positions, so I'd recommend, if you do want to try it out, doing the V3 liquidity positions.
All right, thank you for that. And we have Iran on stage. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm running Node on my laptop, Windows Node. My question is it compulsory to use same wallet for the Node and for the pop miner? Did you get it?
When you say you're running a node, what do you mean by that?
It means Windows Node.
So the only nodes that were, and it's not even really a node, but the only, quote unquote node that we're having people run at the moment is the pop miner. There are some people running just on their own volition other parts of the Hemi stack, which is not incentivized, but obviously welcome and encouraged to do so if they want. For the pop miner, you can use a different address for that than you're using for, like, say, in your MetaMask or your Rabi wallet for the rest of the incentivized testnet. And when the incentivized testnet ends, we'll have a claim process where you can basically link multiple pop miner addresses, multiple addresses you used for on-chain activity, and you'll get credited for the sum of points amongst those addresses, but deduplicated.
And what is the link between Keystone generated using node running?
So a keystone occurs on the Hemi testnet every 5 minutes, and that's basically the block that the pop miners on the network will go and publish to Bitcoin. So every 5 minutes, your pop miner, under normal operations, obviously there's tons of load and you may not hear about every keystone, but normally your pop miner will hear about a new keystone every 5 minutes. It'll do a pop publication of that keystone, basically putting that keystone's data into a Bitcoin transaction, sending it to the Bitcoin network, and then our backend will credit you for that pop mining activity. So there's a dashboard on, let me send the link here in chat, this pop stats dashboard. And so you can go there and look up either your Bitcoin address, or if you're using the same private key in a MetaMask wallet, you can also look up the EVM address or the public key that the pop miner prints out. And that'll show you your pop mining performance, which will show you how many keystones you've mined.
The keystones generated are against the pop miner transactions. That
yeah. So on the stats page, when you look up an address, it'll show you the keystones that you pop mined, which is basically how many pop transactions you did in a certain day. And then points that are credited will be based on the keystones. Although we are going to do when we do the final credit of pop points in Absinthe, which we should be setting up very soon. They opened up their API, so we should be able to commit that.
The main thing is the pop miner, not the Windows node running.
I'm not sure what you mean by the Windows node. Is this like a third-party thing you've downloaded, or because there's the pop miner that runs on Windows?
There are two things in the documents. The node can be run on two systems, the Windows and the Mac.
But you're just running the. Oh, okay. Are you running both the Windows pop miner and like a pop miner on in a web browser?
Yes,
is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so you can if you want to, you can run both.
No, my question is it compulsory to execute transactions with the same wallet? Is it beneficial, or we can do it with different wallets?
You can do it with different wallets. So you can run, if you want to, you can run the web pop miner with one wallet, the CLI one with another wallet, and then when the incentivized testnet process ends, you can link both of those, and then we'll deduplicate so that you only get credit for the keystones that you could have done with one address theoretically, but it'll combine the total mining of those two addresses, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for anyone curious about the pop points, we will be getting those credited on Absinthe very soon. Because we did have infrastructure scalability issues, and obviously people weren't able to pop mine every keystone. What we're going to do is retroactively credit people based on their performance relative to the average. And then going forward, the rules may change now that we got the infrastructure more stable. But for anyone who's been doing pop mining up until this point in air quotes, will get credit primarily in points for their pop mining performance relative to other pop miners running at the same time. And there will be an additional small bonus for people who did go and set up custom infrastructure to be able to run their own pop miner and do more keystones. So majority of the rewards will be, if you are within the average herd of users, you'll get the lion's share of pop points for that day. And then there will be some additional pop points if you outperform them, because people are doing custom work, either customizing the pop miner themselves or running part of the Hemi network stack in their own BFG instance. We do want to make sure that they get some credit for that work that they did as well. So stay tuned for the exact details on that, but just high level letting everyone know.
All right, thank you for that. We have an audience question coming in. Can you explain the keystone mining process? It seems unlikely that all the pop transactions succeed. By example, if a mining transaction takes 24 hours to be mined due to low gas, is the keystone still mined?
Good question. So the answer in Mainnet is no. So Mainnet will require that a keystone gets published to Bitcoin within a certain period of time to be valid. And the rewards that you'll get paid for mining that keystone will be based on the speed of your publication to Mainnet for that specific keystone relative to other users' publications to Mainnet of that same keystone. And so, for example, if we're at Hemi Keystone 1000 and we're at Bitcoin block 100, and you mine Keystone 1000, but you pay a low fee, and so it doesn't get in until Bitcoin block, say, 105, but somebody else mined it and paid a higher fee, and they get into block 101, you'll get very negligible rewards relative to the user who got into Bitcoin, 3-4 blocks ahead of you. And that's to incentivize people to be, the goal of the protocol is that Hemi's chain state is secured to Bitcoin in a timely manner. And so the incentives are built around that. For testnet, for the incentivized testnet, there is a maximum time cutoff in Bitcoin blocks that we'll use. So you can't go back and, mine a keystone from 3 days ago today and get points for it. But we're being a lot more, for the points specifically, we're probably going to, when we do the points crediting, allow either a 12-hour or a 24-hour delay, just so people who were trying to do pop transactions do get points for their activity. But in Mainnet, it'll be a lot different and heavily focused on the speed at which you get into Bitcoin. And so to take the extreme example of like 24 hours, if you mine a keystone and it's sitting in the mempool, the right strategy would be to either do another transaction that does child pace for parent to bump up the fee of that pop transaction, or in the future doing like replace by fee and rebroadcasting that transaction with a new keystone to bump it out of the mempool and try to mine a newer keystone with that same UTXO that you're spending. So we'll provide more details and information on that, but high level in Mainnet, the speed of getting into the blockchain will be incredibly important for rewards.
All right, thank you for that, Max, and thank you for your question. That was a great one. We have one more audience question, and we have a couple more hands up. So there are already many projects running on the Hemi EVM. However, Hemi also works on the Bitcoin blockchain. Is Bitcoin support only for mining? What else can we do with Bitcoin support?
Good question. Now we're getting into the fun stuff, the fun technical stuff. So Hemi's architecture is basically a dual chain L2. So when you look at Ethereum L2s, they're an L2 to only one L1 network, Ethereum. And then the Bitcoin ecosystem, most of the Bitcoin L2s are just a L2 to Bitcoin itself. The way Hemi's designed is it's an L2 to both Bitcoin and Ethereum simultaneously. And so that means that basically our block derivation process, the thing that makes the Hemi network tick and incorporates information from the L1, it's deriving blocks based on both Bitcoin and Ethereum state. And with our HVM technology, the Hemi Virtual Machine, you can think of it basically as an EVM with a full Bitcoin node embedded inside of it. And what that allows you to do is write smart contracts that can basically talk directly to that embedded Bitcoin node and do really interesting stuff that you can't do with other Bitcoin interoperability solutions. So we're using Bitcoin for security with POP, but we're also running a Bitcoin full node in the EVM that you can write smart contracts that talk to. And for kind of the technical of how it works, if you're familiar with the EVM architecture, basically we added in new precompiles. So precompiles are usually used for things like accelerating, hash functions or other cryptographic functions, some stuff that's useful in verifying ZK proofs and whatever. That's basically, it goes outside the EVM and is calculated in native code and then returned into the EVM for efficiency purposes. So we took that same approach, but we introduced new precompiles that talk to that Bitcoin node. So you could call a precompile that gets the address, the balance of a Bitcoin address, or the UTXOs of a Bitcoin address, or it gets a certain slice of a transaction. And you can use that to crawl back in transaction chains to get previous transactions if you need information from them. And so the end result of that is you can build new types of Bitcoin-aware DApps like non-custodial Bitcoin dexes, non-custodial Bitcoin lending protocols. You could do some really cool stuff with native Bitcoin staking. You could even build like a Bitcoin MEV marketplace where you could pay, USDC or USDT or ETH or whatever to expedite transactions on the Bitcoin network, and then Bitcoin miners could use that to choose how they build their Bitcoin blocks and then collect rewards on the Hemi protocol, because you could write a smart contract that has that visibility into, kind of X-ray vision into the Bitcoin network. And so that's the from a programmer developer perspective, the way that Bitcoin interoperability works. And then from a user perspective, our Bitcoin tunnel system that's built on top of HVM will let you bring over Bitcoin and eventually in the future Bitcoin-based assets like runes, BRC20s, ordinals, and basically tokenize them on the Hemi network, and that present as generally an ERC20 token, or if it's a non-fungible, an ERC721. And then you can use those in any protocol just like any other ERC20. So for example, SushiSwap's going to be deploying on Hemi mainnet. And from Sushi's perspective, Bitcoin that's tunneled over to the network is just another ERC20 token, just like ETH or USDC or whatever tunneled over from the Ethereum ecosystem. And those two assets can be, those two classes of assets from both networks can be used interchangeably in any protocol that supports the ERC20 format.
All right, Josh, are we back to calling folks? Okay, looks like Poison is next on deck. Joshua's going to send you an invite, and then the floor is yours.
Hello, Max. Thanks for your time. As I wrote question in the chat, what is happening with original pop mining and Verilog, and does it have any future? And if yes, when? Thank you.
Can't say anything more on it now, but there will be an announcement relatively soon, and we are doing something with Hemi. So can't provide any more details, unfortunately, but stay tuned. And it'll be worth the wait.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much for your question. Josh, do we have anyone else on deck?
iStacks is next.
All right. Okay, invite has been sent, iStacks. When you get on stage, the floor is yours.
Okay, it's good to be here. So please, I wanted to ask a question on the capsule mining. I've been trying to, I think for a certain number of days now, I've been trying to do the whole capsule NFT mine, but then I get to some point where I can't actually redeem anymore. So I wanted to know if it's from the inner system or it's probably from my end. It's been like that for like, I think about a week or two for me now.
We'll have to look into that. We've had a couple people reporting capsule issues recently, so we'll take a look at that. It's if you were able to do it before and it suddenly stopped working, it's probably something on our end. If this is the first time you're trying to do it and it hasn't been working, it may be something that you're doing, but we'll look into it and make sure Capsule's working correctly.
Okay, thank you so much. Then some other question I've got to ask is, for the Zilli tax, I noticed you can actually request for the full set on Discord no more. I don't know if it's a general issue too, or it's from my end as well.
I'm not super familiar with the Zealy part. I don't know if John or Rick or Joshua, you guys want to chime in. My understanding was we were phasing out at least parts of Zealy, and so that may be why, and focusing more on the on-chain components through Absinthe. But if anyone else from my team has more info on Zealy, definitely feel free to jump in.
John, are you able to speak?
I would have to defer to Mr. Greenwood on this one.
He may not be able to unmute, but I'd say high level, definitely focus on the points on the Absinthe system, and there may be some legacy stuff on Zealy that's still available, but definitely the lion's share of incentives are through Absinthe and doing pop mining versus any of the Zealy tasks. There may be some stuff in the future. I'm not sure what the DevRel team has planned for some of the developer side things that need more manual verification. Stuff like, deploying a contract that uses HVM or HBK, or, forking a repo, or making pop miner modifications on GitHub. So some of that stuff may still go through Zealy because of the manual process, but I would definitely focus on Absinthe, and if there's anything on Zealy, it should be pretty minimal and probably being phased out. Like we used to have the capsule claim there because that required some manual verification, but now we're no longer giving out like the onboarding capsules with that manual verification process. It's now purely self-serve for like creating a capsule, redeeming a capsule, and detected by the Absinthe system. So high level, I don't think there's much of interest on Zealy at the moment, so I wouldn't worry too much about it, but definitely would be curious to hear what John Greenwood has to say if there's anything that I'm missing on that side.
He may be having technical issues, but iStacks, thank you very much for your questions. Hope you got all the info that you needed.
Yeah, I actually got the clarity I needed. Thank you so much. Appreciate.
Awesome.
And I'm actually a big believer of the Hemi network, so I hope the wait will be worth it eventually.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. We're excited. So a lot of good stuff coming soon. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for your support.
All right.
All right, we have a couple other audience questions on deck. Are you focusing on DEX, decentralized exchanges, or CEX, centralized exchanges? And that question is from Alpha.
High level, I mean, as an L2, the main thing we're focused on from a network usability, creating traffic and liquidity is on the DEX side on chain, and that's that goes beyond just exchanging assets, but also stuff like lending markets. We will be listing on centralized exchanges, like we're pretty much every project has to go through that and be available on centralized exchanges, but I can't announce any exact details. Generally, legally, you can't announce exchange listings until they're announced by the exchange themselves, so stay tuned. But definitely going to be pursuing both.
All right. And also from Alpha, what are the estimated fees to be on Hemi Mainnet? I'm not sure if that's something you can answer, but I wanted to get that question addressed if possible.
It's a good question. So fees on an L2 depend on how much people are using it. And so it's, you can think of it kind of like it's a scarce resource, and if there's more people who want to use the L2 at a certain point in time, then there is gas available on the L2. People will bid for that space. So talking generally, fees will be for the same amount of utilization of the Hemi network as, say, something like Optimism or Base or Arbitrum. The fees will be similar because we're using the same DA mechanism. And so right now, DA on Ethereum is actually really cheap post Demkin with the blob storage. Eventually, blob storage is going to fill up on Ethereum, and there's going to be a competitive market for that, which actually we did see shortly after the Demkin release when people started doing like blob subscriptions where they were basically doing the equivalent of like ordinals NFTs, but using blobs and storing full NFT data on Ethereum. So fees will be based on 3 components. It's the cost of Ethereum DA, which right now is cheap, but may not be cheap forever. 2 is the base gas fee. And so the more people using the network adjusts up its kind of minimum on-chain, on L2 fees that it charges, similar to the way Ethereum does. And then you also have the optional tip that you can put on top of your transaction so that sequencers will prioritize your transaction over other ones that are all meeting that minimum base fee. So high level, we can't say a specific fee because it's going to depend on market dynamics, both on the Ethereum side and the Hemi L2 gas market side. But you can expect the fee market to behave very similarly to other Ethereum L2s like Optimism and Base.
All right, awesome. Hope that addressed your question, Alpha. Questions, sorry. Josh, do we have anything else on deck as far as folks who want to speak? All right. While I'm waiting for for Josh to unmute, we have another audience question. What benefits will we receive from mining keystones through the pop miner?
So we're talking about Testnet. It's basically part of the points program. So if you mine keystones, you'll get points similar to the points you can get for doing a swap or creating a capsule, or previously until we spun it down, tunneling assets from Ethereum mainnet over. And so for now, it's just the points program. In mainnet, it will be Hemi tokens that the protocol is paying out for pop mining. But I do want to caveat, we'll publish more details that explain the exact economic breakdown and kind of the self-balancing mechanism and how it works. Mainnet is going to self-balance around a target number of pop miners, or basically a target decentralization threshold. So basically the way the mainnet protocol will work is as more people pop mine, the total reward that's getting paid out will decrease. And then as people stop pop mining, the reward will increase. And the protocol will use that mechanism to try to average out to somewhere like 4 or 5 pop miners active at a time. And so it's going to be an open market competition dynamic, but the end result is you pay Bitcoin to send Bitcoin transactions and pay those fees, and then you receive Hemi tokens from the protocol, and whether that's profitable or not depends on how many other people are pop mining and what that competition looks like.
Awesome.
But for testnet, just if you're pop mining, you're going to get points, and it doesn't matter how many other people are pop mining. Points are points.
All right. I know we have no public information, but I'm going to ask this one anyway. When does the team have a plan to launch mainnet?
Q4, which we are currently in, so fairly soon, before the end of the year.
All right, you guys heard it. Q4, baby. Josh? Do we have anyone on deck for stage? Oh,
we have 2 people that have both already asked questions. Do you want to let them on again?
If they're different questions, we certainly could. We do have another audience question though. Like pop consensus mechanism is mainly implemented by the child blockchains, which rely on the security of strong large blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum. What is the major objective of introducing Hemi as an L2 blockchain on Bitcoin network? Like what is its major purpose aside from aside from blah blah blah, what is its real use case?
Good question. So to give a couple examples, so you can think of Hemi as basically sitting between Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so you can bring Bitcoin assets to the Hemi network, you can bring Ethereum assets to the Hemi network, and you can engage in any sort of DeFi protocol you can do on other EVM chains, but with that access to Bitcoin and Ethereum assets. And that's not a wrapped version of Bitcoin that you're trusting, a single public company to be the custodian for. That's Bitcoin that's brought over in a decentralized custodianship mechanism. And so it's, adhering to the ethos of economic incentive alignment, decentralization, trust minimization, and eventually with BitVM, essentially a trustless Bitcoin custodianship mechanism for taking your Bitcoin, moving it to a programmable environment, and doing stuff with it. Beyond that, because we are connected to both networks, Hemi can also act as a kind of a throughput or a throughway rather between those networks. So you could take Bitcoin using whatever custodianship mechanism Hemi has in place at the time. So eventually, basically near trustless BitVM custodianship, and you can move those Ethereum assets or move those Bitcoin assets into the Ethereum ecosystem. So Hemi can act as not only a central place where you can bring assets from both networks and do stuff with them together in DeFi applications, but also a place for bringing in Bitcoin assets into the Ethereum ecosystem in a highly secure manner. Beyond just what you can do, quote unquote, financially with tokens themselves, there's also stuff that you can build on Hemi that is Bitcoin aware and can do things that you can't do with other Bitcoin interoperability solutions. And the goal of that is basically, when you look at how a lot of other L2s in the Bitcoin space are designing their architecture, they're enshrining a single interoperability primitive into their protocol that then users can leverage, but only the people designing the protocol can basically configure and control. With Hemi, what we're doing is we're elevating Bitcoin awareness that is normally reserved for the protocol level. We're elevating that into the EVM so that people can build their own bespoke Bitcoin interoperability infrastructure. So if you wanted to build a Bitcoin smart wallet with custom set of keys that are collateralized using a particular asset with a particular oracle, using certain collateralization thresholds, run Bitcoin smart wallets for other DeFi applications, you could build that on Hemi because you have this Bitcoin awareness that your smart contract can reference. If you wanted to build a truly non-custodial Bitcoin staking system where people are parking Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network in a way that basically allows them to opt into being a validator in some sort of shared security protocol, you could build that on Hemi all in the EVM because you have all the Bitcoin awareness and insights into whether, when the funds are deposited into the custodianship address on Bitcoin, monitoring to make sure they're not moved out unless it's permitted by the protocol, stuff like that. So you're able to build these Bitcoin aware applications that normally you'd have to build like into the protocol layer of an L2. You can build them in the EVM as smart contracts on Hemi. So financially, Bitcoin and Ethereum assets together, and you can do all the DeFi stuff with them. And beyond that, bringing Bitcoin assets to the Ethereum ecosystem securely. And then non-financial or quasi non-financial would be building new types of Bitcoin interoperability infrastructure and applications that require the Bitcoin awareness that we're providing through HVM.
That was awesome. Thank you for that, Max. We are getting a little short on time, and I apologize if we're not addressing every single question this week, but there is one more that I saw that I feel would be really important kind of to close on. So the question is, what is the difference between T-Hemi, Keystones, and Pilot Points program?
Good question. So the Pilot's Point program is basically the entire incentivized testnet program. So whether you're doing swaps, whether you're creating a capsule, whether you're doing pop mining, you get points. And a point's a point's a point. So a point you earn from pop mining is no different than a point that you earn from doing a swap. Obviously, the amounts for each activity are different, but the common denominator there is the points themselves, and it's one. Wherever you get the point from, it's the same point for the purposes of incentivized testnet. T-Hemi is paid out by the protocol to people who do pop mining. The T-Hemi does not matter don't worry about it. It's just a way for us to test the payout mechanism of the protocol for the way that it will be used in mainnet. But the T-Hemi is not worth anything. There's no reason to hoard it or try to collect it or anything. If you're not getting paid out in T-Hemi, but your POP transactions are showing up on the POP stats dashboard, then you will get points, and that's what matters. So you can essentially ignore T-Hemi for all incentive purposes. It's just basically a way for us to test the protocol POP payout mechanism. And then keystones are the Hemi blocks that you actually POP mine. So each keystone that the Hemi network creates, which on testnet is 5 minutes, and on mainnet will probably be slightly longer, but for now on testnet 5 minutes, every keystone is an opportunity to do a new POP transaction. And if you do a POP transaction for that keystone, you'll get points for it. And like I said earlier, we will be doing some kind of points shaping around the number of keystones that you mined in the past versus the number of keystones an average user using our infrastructure was able to mine, with some additional bonus for anyone who did do custom work to mine keystones more reliably when we were having infrastructure issues. But basically, each keystone is an opportunity to pop mine. When you pop mine it, you get points, and those points are the same type of points that you get from doing other on L2 activities for the purposes of incentivized testnet.
All right, thank you for that. Max, I want to be respectful of your time. In the interest of time, we did have another hand up from someone who hasn't spoke yet. Do you have time to field one more?
Yeah, I can stick around for a little bit.
Okay. Josh? I believe we have, yep, Alpha. Stage is yours.
How are you? So, I have a little question. Let's say I want to create a Web3 game on your Hemi resolution. So, what SDK, what tools do you provide? And can you specifically say what language too?
Yeah, just to make sure I understood the question. So you're saying if you're going to build a Web3 game on Hemi, what languages, SDKs does the Hemi network support?
Yeah, correct.
Got it. Okay, cool. So from a tooling perspective, Hemi basically supports all of the standard EVM tooling. So you can use Remix, you can use Hardhat, you can use Foundry, and you can use any language that compiles to the EVM. Obviously, 99% of people are using Solidity, but any other language that does compile to the EVM and works on Ethereum would also work on Hemi. But so high level, basically, most people who build on Hemi will probably be using a mix of Remix, Hardhat, and Foundry as tooling, and then Solidity as the language they write their contracts in. And also, a question we get a lot with HVM, EVM is the backwards compatibility. So the Hemi HVM is fully backwards compatible with the current version of EVM deployed on Ethereum mainnet. So any smart contract that you can deploy and run on Ethereum mainnet will run on the Hemi network. The only thing with HVM is we've added the new Bitcoin interoperability stuff that you can choose to use if it makes sense for your application. But if you're just building something that would work on other EVM networks, you can completely ignore the additional HVM features and functionality and just use it as if it were an EVM.
I mean, will there be performance difference, or it's just?
Did you ask if there'd be a performance difference, like for gas fees?
Yeah. Gas fees.
So right now, the gas calculation on a Hemi testnet is the same as is used on Ethereum. That may change at some point in the future as we get closer to doing ZK proving of the Hemi network. We may have to reprice some of the, especially the built-in cryptographic precompiles. But high level, for the initial mainnet and currently on testnet, everything will be priced the same way from a gas measurement perspective as it is on Ethereum mainnet. Obviously, being an L2, it should be a lot cheaper than Ethereum mainnet because you're competing for gas on the L2 environment, which is not nearly as congested as Ethereum itself. But from a developer perspective, the actual gas consumption of like the functions on your smart contract should be completely the same between Ethereum and our network.
Great. Thanks.
Absolutely.
All Thank you so much for your question, Alpha. With that, we are right at the top of the hour or so, so we are going to wrap up this week. Thank you all for your questions. It's been incredible. This is one of the best turnouts we've had so far. And we're going to keep this party rolling week in and week out. So get your questions ready for next week. As always, thank you so much to Max for your time and taking the time to address everyone. And yeah, I'll turn it back to you, Max, for an outro, and then we'll see you in Discord.
Awesome, sounds good. And we'll finish up with one last question. I saw somebody ask in chat, what's the main difference between Hemi and other Bitcoin EVM hybrid networks? So good question. The way that most other EVM, so there's a couple different categories of Bitcoin L2s. There's ones that are basically just slapping an EVM on top of Bitcoin and then using like Bitcoin for DA. And so some of those support moving Bitcoin assets to and from the L2, some of them don't. Some of them are only using Bitcoin for DA, and otherwise they're acting as a completely separate blockchain ecosystem. Some of them are trying to interact with the Ethereum world as well. Some of them are completely in the Bitcoin landscape. So there's a lot of different flavors out there. But the high level is basically Hemi is actually integrating with the Bitcoin and the Ethereum protocols at a very low level that other Bitcoin L2s are not doing. And the two main ways that it's doing that, the first being pop mining the way that we're inheriting Bitcoin security in a way that does not give control of block production, of transaction ordering over to the Bitcoin miners. So a lot of other Bitcoin L2s are either using merge mining or looking to eventually use merge mining. And the issue with that approach is you're basically making the Bitcoin miners the sequencers on your network. And it has negative externalities for Bitcoin's own game theory. But more importantly, it basically gives Bitcoin miners the ability to reorg the Bitcoin L2 while they mine Bitcoin normally. So you're getting the Bitcoin hash rate, but you're not getting the Bitcoin security, which is an important nuance. And what we're doing with pop mining is we're divorcing the two. We're saying creating a block, ordering sequencing that is separated from securing the block to Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin miners cannot go and reorg the Hemi chain without having to go and 51% attack Bitcoin itself, which is obviously a lot more expensive. And also with merge mining, you have to actively get Bitcoin miners to participate in your protocol. And so if you only get 30% of the Bitcoin hash rate to participate in mining your protocol, you're only getting 30% of Bitcoin's hash rate, quote unquote, securing your network. And then, 16 of that 30% could go and do a reorg on your network versus the way we're doing security inheritance. We inherit all of Bitcoin's security immediately, and the Bitcoin miners could only reorg Hemi if they also reorged Bitcoin itself. So that's the security side. And then for the feature side, Bitcoin interoperability side, that's where HVM comes in, and that what we've been talking about, the Bitcoin node embedded in our EVM, that allows you to build those applications that are Bitcoin aware in a much more robust way than other Bitcoin L2s support. So most other Bitcoin L2s, and I won't speak for all of the probably 100 at this point, but the way most of them, especially if they're EVM-based, are approaching Bitcoin interoperability is using something like Bitcoin Header Relay, which is a system we've already had on Ethereum for almost a decade now. And it only allows you to validate that a transaction exists in the canonical Bitcoin chain. And it also requires a group of relayers who relay Bitcoin blocks over to the smart contract so it can update its own internal lightweight view of Bitcoin consensus. The way that Hemi's working instead is there's a full Bitcoin node running inside the EVM that communicates directly with the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network. And so your smart contract has access to everything about the Bitcoin chain. So when you look at a Bitcoin header relay system, all you can prove is this transaction does exist in the canonical chain. If you have access to the full Bitcoin state, you can say, what has been the net effect on this address of all the transactions that are relevant to it in the Bitcoin chain, a la, what is the UTXO table? And so you have that deeper insight into what's actually happening on Bitcoin that can't be cryptographically proven with just a transaction with a Merkle proof against a block header. And it also does so without relayers. So the protocol as a Bitcoin L2, the Hemi protocol is, as it progresses, naturally pulling in Bitcoin information into that Bitcoin full node that runs inside the EVM. And so you're not relying on a group of relayers who could disappear or do something malicious. And it's providing information that can't be efficiently cryptographically proven about Bitcoin in a reliable manner that doesn't require oracles or any sort of trust assumption, because that Bitcoin full node is running itself as part of the Hemi state transition function. And so with that, I think we'll, let me see if there's any more questions right at the end here.
Before we end, I want to give a quick thanks to all of our community moderators who have been helping us keep the server clean and under control. Without them, it's mostly just Rick and I trying to keep everything under control. And I apologize, I may mispronounce some of their names. Our community moderators are currently Ajit, Alex, Aviched, I can't pronounce them, sorry. Creator, Foxstar, Funky Sasquatch, Hadoukem, Koki, Liko, No Tears, Yahoos, and YYG. Thank you all.
Yeah, huge thanks to the community moderators. It takes a village to raise a community, I guess. So really appreciate all the work you guys are putting in.
Yeah, thank you so much, all, and please make fun of Josh later for butchering your names. I'm sure we'll see something in mod chat.
But he's braver than we were, so
yeah, I appreciate you even attempting that. But with that, thank you so much, all. We appreciate you guys showing up. We appreciate your continued support. And yeah, we're just gonna keep going and keep making things better. So with that, we're going to bring this to an end, and we will see you next week. Thank you again to Max. Thank you to all of you, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for coming. We'll see you next week.